Last-minute shakeup at 5:30 a.m., laundry situation not good. And when your focus is on helping your clients, it's easy to forget about yourself. But NASM knows trainers.
Morning ride is okay.
And staying in front of the day isn't always as simple as 1, 2, 3. So when the unexpected has you pressing pause,
what's the latest on creatine?
I'm going to get back to you on that.
let NASM1 help you press play. Visit NASM.org to sign up for a membership today.
Well, hello there, listeners. Welcome to this week's episode of the Better Than Fine podcast. I'm your host, well-being expert and wellness coach, Darlene Marshall. And in positive psychology, we have these tools that we call positive interventions. The name essentially comes from, in traditional psychology, they call the stuff they would do to help people feel better an intervention. And then along came positive psychology, and we're like, well, what do we call these practices? Do we call them positivity practices? Do we call them like what? So, psychologists being psychologists, they called them positive interventions. But I just like to call them positive practices or tools. And they're the tools that I use with my clients. And one of the jobs of someone who works in positive psychology is to try to come up with new ways to use the body of evidence to teach people how to do the well-being thing, which is kind of cool. So anyway, one whole class of these positive interventions is positive emotional practices. It's the way that we could teach ourselves to intentionally practice the neurological, the emotional state of something good. Now, why would you want to do that? There's a few reasons why. One of them, you might be familiar with something called negativity bias. Negativity bias is this natural human condition because we are the product of the ancestors that paid attention to threats. So naturally, we have evolved to be, as humans, as all humans, we all have some degree of negativity bias. Some of us have stronger or weaker negativity bias where we're more likely to focus on a negative experience than a positive one. So if you think about this, like you post something to social media, you get, a bazillion likes and yay comments, and then you get a couple of rude folk. Think about which one you ruminate about when you go and lay your head down at night. It's not the happy ones, right? It's typically the rude folk. That's negativity bias. And negativity bias can chip away, can eat away at our well-being. And so if we know, okay, we have this bias toward the negative, or we have learned all of the different ways that positive emotional experiences can help benefit our well-being, our nervous system, our focus, our cognition, our relationships, etc. You've heard it on the show a bazillion times. We can intentionally choose to practice these positive emotional states to make us more and more sensitive to them, to shift our focus, our attentional awareness, our cognition, our neurophysiology, right? There's so many good reasons that we'd want to do this. Well, over in my community, the Wellbeing Revolution, one of the members of that group, who is in her own right an excellent coach, created her own positive emotional priming activity, her own positive intervention. And I am obsessed with it. I've already taught it to a couple of my own clients. Some of them really love it. So I'm so excited. As soon as this came into my head and my heart, I was like, I got to share this on the show. Because it's so elegant and simple. I just had to share it with you. So our guest today is Heather Sangermano. She is an NASM certified wellness coach, personal trainer, and nutrition coach. She's got, get this is the coolest degree. She has a bachelor's degree in leisure science and a master's in education administration and leadership, and is the owner of Optimum Personal Training. She's got a great personal story that I'm also excited for her to share with us, and she's going to teach us about her new positive intervention. Heather, welcome to Better Than Fine.
Thank you, Darlene. That was a wonderful introduction. I'm so happy to be here.
A wonderful intro for a wonderful woman. So you've had a long relationship with fitness, with wellness. You've had this journey that I think is so not just interesting as a practitioner perspective, because I think a lot of people get into this work because of their own journey, but I also think there's a lot we can learn from it. So could you share with us a bit about where you started in fitness, the sojourn along the way, and where you are now.
Absolutely. So my fitness journey started back when I was maybe 9 or 10. My first memory is of sitting on the back deck with my father, lacing up my sneakers, getting ready to go for a jog. That led into athletics as a youth, athletics in high school, loved the competition, loved the community that brought me. But it also led me to my own type of fitness. And I would run and do aerobics. Back then that was sort of the thing. And I did it really with the intention of, so how do I maintain my body, my fitness, what I look like? How do I stay thin? So at the time, that was ultimately my goal. That led me then to heading off to college, excited about the opportunities. Transitions are difficult, baggage comes along with you. And I walked my way into a pretty significant episode and period of time with disordered eating. So I was restricting my food significantly. I was exercising really compulsively and excessively, and really struggled with this for a period of time, trying to yet again find that thin. And my body just didn't want to respond. And so I went to these extreme measures to try to find that for myself. I struggled with that for a period of time until I met an individual who was competing in bodybuilding. This was all new to me. Took me to a competition, and I sat in the audience, and the women entered the stage, and I said, that's it. That is what I want to look like. They are amazing. Maybe my body will do that. I feel like it could build some muscle. That is my path. And being the very goal-oriented person that I am, I said, 1 year I'm going to compete in a bodybuilding competition. And so that pulled me out of this restrictive eating into this goal of getting my body to look like those women on the stage. So I did have to incorporate food and very specific food, and exercise and very specific exercise. And I had gotten myself a coach and really kind of worked my way to that goal, where in a year I had competed in my first bodybuilding competition. Loving it, just loving what it was bringing to me, how I was feeling. Looking back, I might say to myself that I went from one form of addiction potentially into another. And so as time went on, I ended up getting married, graduated, ended up getting married, having children, still competing in bodybuilding and doing various other types of exercise, because at this point it was just the fabric of my life, of my week. And I decided after I had children, I wanted to see if my body could do this again. So competed once again after that. Then moved on to run marathons and do sprint triathlons. So fitness has always been sort of this, okay, I've got a goal. I'm going to do something a little extreme. And that's what I need at this point. So as you had mentioned, I had a degree in leisure science at the time. What
Coolest degree.
what was leisure science? Like, what exactly do you do with that? So I had dabbled in a few things. I actually had also gotten a degree in education at that point and decided I wanted to start a personal training business. This fitness thing had been wonderful in my life. I really wanted to do this. So I did. I got my certification. I actually got my certified strength and conditioning coach certification because I wanted to coach some athletes. So I did I worked with athletes, worked with the various people, but the focus at the time was really about, how do I help people get the body that they're looking for? How do I get them to the body composition, or this is what I want to look like? And that had been my experience. That had been the journey that I was on. So that was my lens. So I did that for a period of time. And when my kids went off to school, the schedule just didn't work for me anymore. So I went back into my career in education, taught special education for a while, got my administrative degree, opened up a non-traditional high school, which was just an amazingly cool experience, became the principal of another alternative high school, and then later was asked to take over as the principal of a comprehensive high school. Not really quite the goals that I had. I wasn't looking for that, but they were in the midst of a bit of a crisis and a bit of a scandal, and were in need of somebody to sort of pull them through that. So I did that, all the while through my years in education, maintaining my focus on fitness. So now with this new job, the time commitment was extensive, but I was committed to maintaining my movement and my nutrition. So I would get up at 3:45 in the morning. I would exercise. I would work my 14 to 16 hours. I would worry about what I was eating and focus on that, thinking this is going to hold me together. This is going to help me get through that. And well, in fact, it didn't. I started to feel I don't feel well. I'm getting sick a lot. I feel physically and emotionally like I'm just not in a good place. And for my whole life, I had thought this was going to be all I needed. I was just going to stay committed to this and I would be fine. And I reached a point where it was ultimately a breaking point. I couldn't do it anymore. Physically, I couldn't manage it. Emotionally, I couldn't do it. And I had to leave that job. Still committed to education, I took a different step and started teaching again and did that for a period of time. And then last maybe November, I decided heading into 20 years of education, I'm going to put an end cap on that. And I want to think about what is my next step. And I thought, I want to go back into the health and fitness industry. I have found this to be a thread in my life, loved it when I did it. So I decided to go back and get my certification because I had let it lapse. And so I went and did the NASM certified personal training. Then I did the nutrition coach. And then I found the wellness coaching certification. And as I was sort of exploring it, I was like, this is interesting to me. I feel this is sort of something that I feel like I might have been looking for, and I didn't know I was looking for it. And so as I started in the curriculum, you have those moments where you say, wait a minute, well, this all makes sense to me. Like this might have been what I was waiting to hear because I have felt these things, but my exterior hasn't been telling me that this is the way that this can go, this whole wellness, well-being and fitness and nutrition, like how they all tie together, like there's a bigger picture. So really loved that course and embraced that. And as I left my career in education in June, I decided I was going to open this business again, but from a very different point of view, from a framework of there is more than just movement and nutrition. Those are pieces of a bigger puzzle. And I really felt I needed that for myself. And I wanted to provide that for my clients. I wanted to give something that I can help you. But when you reach those barriers and you're like, why am I not losing weight? And we talk about your sleep and you're sleeping 4 hours, that's something we have to think about. So this has become my business with the same name, but a very different perspective and lens for me.
Yeah. Every time you talk about that, your story, and thank you for sharing it with us. This touch points of this journey of the fitness industry for a very long time. And I do think it's getting better. I don't think we're there yet, but I do think it's getting better. But for a very long time, had a very specific projection of what fitness was for and what the people who were good at fitness looked like. And I know you and I have talked in the past about like you look like that, right? Like you are muscular, you are lean, you did the thing. And partly probably because you were bodybuilding in your 20s. But when you've talked to me before about this time in your life where you were working at the principal, you had taken over this role, and the amount of burnout that you had, and this assumption that you'd had that like, oh, well, if I'm consistent with my fitness, well, that's supposed to help me with my stress. That will keep me from the problem.
Mm-hmm.
But in some ways, it being the problem. And so whenever you talk about this, and then you talk about finding CWC, I get giddy because for me, it's like, she gets it. Because the paradigm shift of then seeing how all of these different facets of our life not only intersect and interact, but that the purpose of it underneath is so that people are empowered to have a good life.
Mm-hmm.
And when we shift our lens that way as practitioners, like to call lifestyle practitioners, lifestyle professionals, it completely changes our approach to our work.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, it takes a lot of the like, I just remember new trainers when I was working in club and I was mentoring and managing. I remember this like animosity when clients wouldn't get results because it implied that like we were failures.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much more complicated than that. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on it, but I just want to highlight this long road that you've had because of your lifelong relationship with fitness, the things that you've experienced and seen, and the change in you that is now different for your clients, I think is so important.
Yes, I have to say that if I think back to the trainer I was, back in 2002 and who I am now, I gave it my best. It's not like back then I wasn't trying to be the best trainer I could be, but the things that I have experienced and the challenges that I have faced, and even the challenges around my own self-worth as it relates to, I was a get on the scale every day person. And my husband would say, depends on the number. The number indicates what you will be today, what you're moving today. And so just having experienced that and worked my way to a place where I can now see progress around my health and fitness in a very different light has helped me to be a mirror for my clients when they talk about their own frustrations or, their own struggle with the scale. And exactly as you referenced, like, why am I not making progress? And we dig a little deeper for what are the other components in your life that may be having an impact on this. And it doesn't all boil down to that number.
Yeah. How are we defining progress?
Yes.
Let's just start there. Are you happier? Are you
Right.
freer? Are you moving better? Are you having more fun?
Yes.
Why do you care about this little machine that's controlling your mental health?
Absolutely.
I'm with you.
Yes.
We're going to shift gears a little bit because I could talk about this with you all day, but that's not what we're here for. We're here to talk about something else. You are a member of the Wellbeing Revolution, our online digital community, and part of our journey so far this year, we've only been out in the world for 2 months. And one of the themes so far has been around building better systems into the lives of our community members. Can you talk a little bit just about like your impressions of the Wellbeing Revolution so far and like some of the shifts that you've had? Because I think that sets the stage nicely for like the thing we are here to talk about. And I want to caveat this with like, I think sometimes there is an assumption for the general public or people consuming shows like this where it's like, oh yeah, we have it all figured out and you're just going to do whatever we're going to tell you to do. It's like, no, we're people, we're still learning too, which I think is so cool because I think of you as such a knowledgeable and talented and experienced fitness professional, and it is really fun to also get to see you growing with the community.
Yeah. Well, really, I found the Wellbeing Revolution because I have to say this, I am a huge fan of Better Than Fine. And so thrilled to be actually on this show. And I'm not just saying that. That's really, I authentically
didn't pay her. I swear I didn't pay her.
like, this is exciting. So when you started to present that you were going to start this community, I was really feeling like I had come from a career for 20 years where I had a community. And now I was on my own, sort of starting this again and feeling like, where is my community around wellness and that process for your own well-being, and how could I use that potentially to help my clients, knowing I will always be on this journey. So I will never say I have reached the end and have all my systems in place or don't need refinement. So when I started with the Wellbeing Revolution, I was all in. I was absolutely embracing every component of what you put out there. And I was like, I'm doing everything, doing every challenge. I'm answering every prompt because I am desperate for all of this. And so ultimately, starting out with the priorities audit, which was really kind of that beginning to sort of reestablish like what is important to me. And I had always felt like, I have a pretty good idea of what my priorities and my values are. But having done that and looked at where I spend my time, it really brought a lot of things to light for me. So as I entered into some of these other components, such as the upward spiral challenge, which was the first month of getting back into that meditation and gratitude and movement, those things have been a part of my life, but I had sort of lost a focus on when you do them consistently, gosh, you do feel something different.
Yeah.
And I was always like, yeah, I know it. Yeah, I meditate and I do that. And I'm grateful and I journal occasionally about that. But I hadn't sort of sharpened the saw on, there's a level of consistency that makes a difference. So that was very helpful. And then it led to our Goal Getter Challenge, which for me tied very closely to the Sunday setup. So the Sunday setup for me, well, the Sunday setup is a series of systems for getting organized for your week. And you had presented a lot of different strategies and ideas. And so as I was going through them, I thought I always am thinking about what my calendar is going to look like. And I know what I have coming up for the week and what appointments I have. But what I didn't really think about is like, what are the projects I want to work on and how do I get them included? Like, what are the things I value and how are those in my week, or are they in my week? So one of the goals I set in the Goal Getter Challenge is to align my schedule with my values. And so I really had to think about, well, I need to get clear on my priorities and my values. So as I started to go through the Goal Getter Challenge and thinking really clearly about what my week looks like, it started to really have me think about what my systems are for organizing that and what exactly is in my calendar, which sort of led me to really being deliberate about what I put in and what I take note of.
Yeah, and what you added into it, which is what we are on spot ready to talk about, I think is so juicy and wonderful. You're listening to the Better Than Fine podcast. I'm your host, Darlene Marshall. The guest is Heather Sangermano. I almost called you Sether. That doesn't even make sense. Heather Sangermano. And we're talking about points of joy. So you've been on this journey, big journey of fitness. Now this kind of little journey so far in this year of like, let's get stuff dialed in. Let's build these effective systems. And how am I spending my time? What am I putting my energy into? What is my attention and awareness going to? And then you shared something with me that we've now shared with the Wellbeing Revolution, but we're going to share on the show, that I think is so unique. I love it so much. I've started doing it myself in my week and in my day. Tell us about the points of joy.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So as I had said, the Sunday setup became a really important part of, my week and how I thought about what that was going to look like. And as I started to organize my calendar, I started to pause and say, like, where's the fun? Where is the enjoyment in my week? There's a lot of appointments on there, but where is it that I'm going to enjoy myself this week? And I've always been a believer that happiness doesn't come from one big thing. For me, it comes from the sum of small points. And so, which led me to this small points of joy, really, as they add up, change the way I feel. And so when I was thinking about my schedule, I started to add in moments of joy, things that I thought, I'm really looking forward to that. That could be a deliberate cup of coffee with my husband, or having dinner with a friend, or going for a walk with my dog, or seeing my son. And so I would identify those in my calendar with a certain color and a little icon so that I could see these are my intentionally scheduled points of joy. And then as I started that, days would sort of go on, and I would notice moments where it started really for me when I had this really amazing conversation with a client. And I was like, God, that was so wonderful. And in my head, I'm like that's a point of joy. Like there's one I wasn't expecting.
I did it.
Wait a minute. So then I started to take note of things that happened during the day that were like, God, that was just a great moment. There were two birds on the bird feeder. Like that is living in the Northeast. We're like, that is great. That's a super point of joy. So I would make note of them in the moment. And then in my morning routine of my journaling practice, I would start to document what happened that was unintentional the day before. So it started to become this 3-part process where, as I'm scheduling in my Sunday setup, I'm deliberately scheduling those moments of joy that I know are coming. And then as things happen, I'm trying to just take note of them. Just be aware that they're occurring and savor them. This was really amazing. What a great thing that was. Then the next day, documenting it and sort of reflecting back on, gosh, that was really a neat moment. Those were great things that happened. These X, Y, and Z happened yesterday. So that became that sort of 3-part process for me that I had shared with you about these points of joy.
And I love it. And it's so simple and so lovely. And I'm going to nerd out for a second about positive psychology and joy and research. And so first off, the research backs up your intuition. that it is this accumulation of moments of positive experience, not like one big thing. And oftentimes when we think like, oh, that car, that house, that promotion, that really hot partner, we think that those things are going to make us happy. And actually we end up returning to baseline after a certain amount of time. Whereas the consistent investment in a mindset shift, in a focal shift, in an attentional shift on these little things is what shifts long-term satisfaction and well-being. So you're spot on there.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to talk for just a second, if you don't mind me nerding out for a second, on joy specifically. So according to Barbara Fredrickson, we've got 10 positive emotions. I think it's possible that there are more but like Barbara Fredrickson's a genius. So who am I to challenge that? But joy specifically, like there is a utility to each of the positive emotions that she's identified. The utility of joy is one to explore, right? It opens up our awareness. It opens up our playfulness so that we want to engage more in our environment. And some of the studies on this is really cool. Well, like your peripheral vision will open. So you'll have more like awareness at the periphery of your vision. Our creativity, our generative creativity, where you're coming up with new ideas, improves. Our ability to connect and build new relationships is improved. Like literally, I notice it in myself now because I've been studying this for a while, that when I'm joyful, I literally observe, like I'm able to pick up on details of stuff around me that I'll have been ignoring for weeks. And all of a sudden I'll have a really good day and I'll be like, ooh, this room got to get this room got to get cleaned. Because of the cognition shift, like literally your engagement with your environment is different. So I think it's one of these things where if, everybody on social media has been freaking out for the last couple of weeks and it's like, okay, we're all saying that we need to take better care of ourselves. Cool. Here's something that actually can help you engage more and motivate you in a different way. And I've been loving it. Actually, this recording with you is one of the yellows in my calendar this week. So there you go.
Mine too, by the way.
Hey, super friends. So let's walk through the 3 steps again. For the listener who hasn't picked up on this over the last few episodes, the Sunday setup is, it started as my personal weekly ritual, but now the community is doing it together, where I set aside time every Sunday to go through a set series of practices for time and task management. You could do it any day of the week. We post new videos on Sunday. I do it personally on Sunday. That's why we call it the Sunday setup. So Heather, when she's saying like, I'm doing my Sunday setup, like I'm getting organized for the week. And it's just that organization has a specific structure to it involving time management and task management and how we go about it. So anyway, so when you do your Sunday setup, you are intentionally scheduling things that are like, this is something I can look forward to. Yes?
Yes, correct.
So that's thing 1.
Yep.
And then thing 2 is, and I think another bit of research I want to point out is that just the act of scheduling these things then increased for you kind of the ambient savoring because it increased your awareness of what you are attentive to, which is one of the benefits of a positive emotional practice. If I sit on my meditation cushion and I meditate about gratitude, when I feel it, I'm going to go, that's gratitude, right? Because I'm paying more attention to it. It's like when you see cars that are the same color as the car you just bought. So you're scheduling them, you're savoring them in the moment. And then the third one is part of your daily practice, right?
Yes, exactly. So in my morning practice, I actually make a document. I actually list moments that were unexpected points of joy for me. I might actually jot down a little bit about how I felt about those, just to kind of enhance how I feel about it, and that kind of keep that moment going a little bit for me. So that becomes the third part, is documenting those, and then a little bit about how I felt the day before.
I've just been listing them, but I think now I'm going to start describing them too. I do it at the end of my morning journaling. I do my little, I put it POJ, I list them, but now I might add a little emotion to it. So since you've been doing this, I know what I've noticed in myself, but since you've been doing this, what have you noticed?
It's so interesting because it has become this, and I can only describe it as I'm sort of skewed to the positive. So not that not that everything is roses and butterflies in my life, because that's not the case. But certainly both my mood, my motivation, my relationships, they just seem to be slightly skewed to the positive. So it's my perspective, it's how I handle difficult things. It's good things that come up that I'm like, God, I think I have a stronger emotion around it. And then the other thing that I've noticed really sort of deliberately is, as I put my moments of joy in for the following week, there's more. And I don't know, am I intentionally putting more in, or is it just things that have occurred anyway, I'm now considering a point of joy.
Ooh.
And so then, in addition to that, my list the following day is longer. And I just, I might have started out with 1 or 2 things from the day before. I mean, I can sometimes go 7 or 8 things from the day before that were points of joy. So it's the sense that my thinking is that my awareness, as I'm aware of things more and more, you see things, if you're paying attention, you see them. And I think, honestly, for a long time, I might have just been letting these points of joy just sort of fly by and not even really recognizing that they're occurring, or that if I note them, that it would actually matter.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to nerd out again. I'm very excited. So there is the attentional awareness of like, I'm just observing more of them. That's a thing. But there is another thing that might be going on. And this is something where I think this is so relevant to fitness, but like very few people in positive psychology are even aware of it. They don't talk about it. And I think it's essential to what you and I do, which is something called vantage sensitivity. And you mentioned earlier doing our upward spiral challenge, and anybody can do the upward spiral stuff anytime. There's multiple episodes on upward spirals in the archive. So go dig around if you want to learn about upward spirals. But essentially, our upward spiral challenge is, I always do it as 3 things. I call them the power 3. So it's a gratitude practice every day. It's a meditation of some kind. And there's lots of different kinds of meditation you could do. And it's 20 minutes of moderate intensity cardiovascular exercise. And the reason is that some of those practices, or maybe all of them, have been shown to increase our sensitivity to positive emotional experience, literally taking advantage of the opportunity to feel good, vantage sensitivity. And so some of these practices that you've already been doing these last few months I've designed them to increase vantage sensitivity, because so the perfect example of this, I know I'm a little rambly, but it's just because I'm very excited. The perfect example of this is one of the first studies around exercise and well-being showed that when someone exercised, for the next 24 hours, they would self-report more positive experiences in their life. And it's like, well, that's not because I'm so virtuous by exercising that more good things are happening. It's because the waterline of where I say, oh, that was good, right? Like shifted. And now there's more stuff above the water, right? Like the tide went out. So literally you become, in my opinion, when you engage in these practices, you are becoming more sensitive to the threshold by which it's no longer an intellectual exercise of like, oh yeah, I should feel grateful for that. It's an actual somatic experience, an emotional experience in your nervous system where you go, oh, that felt so good. You increased your sensitivity to it.
Right.
So you Yahtzeed. This is literally what I wrote my master's capstone on.
Oh, that's great. It makes sense now. It does make sense.
Isn't that cool?
It is.
It works. This stuff works, people. Here you go. Even for somebody who's been engaging in fitness and wellness for decades, the introduction to these practices has changed you. And that is deeply gratifying.
Yes, it really has. And I think that's really what sort of drives me when I share it with clients, is that this really has a tremendous impact and you could quickly lose sight of it. And so little systems to keep yourself paying attention are simple enough, but have a big impact.
Yes. Oh, thank you. That's good. I couldn't have said it better. You hit the nail on the head. And it's because, we now live fully, all of us, in an attention economy, right? Where our whole lives, everything is being constantly marketed to us. And if it's this constant churn and grind of things are being sold, but an attempt to like shark our attention, then we need to have, for those of us who are aware enough to be like, I don't want that to be my life, the onus becomes, unfortunately, on each of us to then build a scaffolding to keep coming back to ourselves. And for me, some of these practices, man, I didn't intend to talk about any of this today on the show, Heather. Good job. Some of these practices to me are about building the systems that bring us continually back to our authenticity, who we want to be when we grow up, so that we can actually show up with a sense of agency in our lives instead of just being constantly yanked in the direction of whatever device is binging at us right now.
Right.
So that we can feel good, so that we can have a good life.
Yes.
It's not about that stupid machine on my bathroom floor.
No, it's not. No, it is not.
Oh, it's awesome. I love it. So points of joy. I'm just going to say it one more time for these. I know it's so simple, my friends, but it really is, like, as systems go, as simple things, so helpful. So have some time each week that you sit down and you decide what you're going to do that week, what you're paying attention to, what you care about, what you're getting done. We call it a Sunday setup. Schedule things into your week that are purely for the joy of doing them. Heather and I both make ours yellow. In the moment, savoring that thing, engaging with it. And then number 3, when you have some kind of daily reflection, taking a moment to go, these are the good things that happened yesterday. And Heather also says a bit more about them than I do. I just list them, but I'm not going to after this conversation. I love it. I love it so much. And thank you for being willing to share it these last few weeks. I know I keep asking you, like, come on the show, do a live stream with me.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm more than happy to share it. I'm just grateful to be part of the conversation and really to be part of that community. It's been really very beneficial to me, and I'm really just excited to continue to see where we go with it. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, anybody who wants to join the Wellbeing Revolution, you're more than welcome. It's totally free. You can find the link on my website. It's right on the homepage. Heather, where can people find you? Because you're wonderful.
Thank you. So people can find me on Instagram, Optimum Personal Training CT, or on my website, which is also OptimumPersonalTrainingCT.com.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Heather, for your time and your brain candy. I appreciate you.
I really appreciate this opportunity, and thank you.
Love it. Super fan of the show. And of course, we would love to hear your feedback, or if you have guest suggestions or stuff you want to share, you feel free to reach out. You can email me. It's info@darlene.coach. My email is, that's my email. My website is also darlene.coach, where you can find the link to the Wellbeing Revolution. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram @darlene.coach. If you're a fan of the show, I hope you already subscribed, but if you haven't, you're going to want to do that. If you could leave us a review, it would always be helpful to do. Like, comment, subscribe, share it. You know what to do. You've listened to enough of these. Thank you so much. Take good care of yourselves and be well.